Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Garima, and in today's webinar, we're going to talk about migration of on-prem infrastructure to the cloud, particularly to Google. We'll also do a short demo of Akasha Cloud that helps applications with planning for moving to the cloud. So we are muting everybody on the webinar today, but you can ask questions as we are going through the webinar. Type them into the chat so we'll be able to see them. And we will address the questions either during the webinar if it makes sense, or definitely at the end of the webinar. We are recording the webinar today, so you will have access to it afterwards. So at this point, I would like to invite our CTO, Gautam Tokcham, to take us through the webinar and then a demo of Akasha Cloud. Gautam, all yours.
Thank you very much, Garima. Good morning, everybody. It's interesting that even as we talk about Google today, everybody at Google is at Google Next, and there's a big presentation going on as well. So I'm looking forward to going there later in the day today. All right, so as far as today's agenda is concerned, so I intend to cover about 30 minutes of presentation where I'm going to share a little bit about some of the trends that we see across the board in the cloud, and we'll talk about how one goes about in the deployment cycle from moving from on-prem to the cloud. Then one of the key things that we're going to cover today is pricing. So we're going to talk about how clouds charge, some nuances, some purchasing discounts, and so on and so forth. And we're going to play a particular focus to Google. And then we're also going to talk about, some of the best practices as you plan for the cloud. And then we'll do a little demo of Akasha, a product, and then we'll spend some time on Q&A, right? Does that sound good, Karima?
Yes.
All right. All right, let's talk about trends, technologies, and vendor strategies. And in terms of technologies, as you can see, every cloud operator right now is focused on the enterprise. It's all about the enterprise. A lot of the born-in-the-cloud companies, they've already been born in the cloud, but the cloud operators, the Amazons, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, they're all now targeting the enterprise. And as they target the enterprise, some of the key things that they have to focus on, build on, are security, manageability, obviously cost containment. And one of the other things you will see some of the vendors is dedicated and bare metal servers to really cater to some of the legacy type of applications that would run better on a native hardware platform than on a virtual machines. And the other big element, of course, is, now that people are interested in the cloud, how do you bring your applications and workloads and data from the cloud, from your on-prem to the cloud. So those are some of the things. And obviously, it's not about just giving you what you already have in your data center in a more efficient manner, but more than what you already have in the cloud. So there's a lot of emphasis on other things that you can do in the cloud, which you'll probably not be able to do on-prem at all. So you will see a lot more PaaS offerings. Containers are big. This is the year of the container, and there's a lot more container-related announcements and products and elements to help you refactor your applications to containerized model. Those are all coming across from almost every cloud vendor as well. Another key element as you consider the cloud is really access to data that you do not own, but your applications can tap into. So that's another big, key area to be considered even as you consider the cloud. Big element, serverless functions, Lambda from Amazon, Google Cloud Functions, Azure Functions, IBM's OpenWhisk. These are some of the key things, and as you containerize your applications, you will see much more and more utilization of these kind of serverless technologies as well. And these are kind of the general trend you'll see. Now let's talk particularly about Google. These are some of the key things about Google.
Before that, Gautam, can we just jump into a quick poll to get a sense for what our attendees are thinking about right now?
Okay.
So let's jump into a quick poll. If you all can see and answer these quickly, then we'll be able to get back into our presentation.
Okay. All right.
So, all right, we'll just give it a couple more seconds. All right.
And are you going to share the poll data, or how does it work?
Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
All right, so this is how it's looking. So it sounds as if the majority of you are looking at Amazon. Do you see that?
Not really.
All right, let me go ahead and share.
Okay.
I think I'll just speak through it. So the majority of you are using or considering Amazon, 71%. Actually, that's tied with Azure. So Amazon and Azure are two that you're really looking at. 43% are looking at Oracle Cloud. 14% are looking at SoftLayer, and 29% are looking at Other. So fine. So this is good, and let's carry on with your presentation.
All right. Can you see my screen? Can you turn off the poll?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So as far as Google is concerned, so I'm going to talk, about what Google's strategy has been and continues to be as we see. So obviously, Google's biggest strength is their technology leadership in building distributed systems. They have built one of the biggest cloud for their Google search technology, and essentially what they're allowing us is to enterprises and other customers to actually tap into that technology and infrastructure as well. Sheer technology brilliance and machine learning. It's all about machine learning in Google these days. Everything that they do, right from and integration with IoT for their data centers. And machine learning, one of the things which they have declared is that 70 to 80% of everything that they do is going to be driven by machine learning in the next couple of years as well. Security has always been a big thing with Google, and they are very proud about it. They say that they have 700 plus highly trained security engineers monitoring and managing security at every single level, right from the core buildings to data centers to networks to chips and software applications and so on and so forth. Strong commitment to open source has always been their forte. Another thing is that they have, unlike others, they actually do own a lot of the network and fiber in the world as well. And they are building one of the most efficient data centers worldwide, and biggest and most efficient. The latest one that's being announced today is that's coming up in the Netherlands in the next quarter or so. And because of their efficient data centers, because of their core hardware that they build to spec, some of them even build their own chips, they are able to actually bring down the cost of infrastructure. And as all the clouds operators race to the bottom of the cost in infrastructure, they have the ability to stay, play the long game compared to most others. Willingness to invest in cutting-edge technology in data center, I mentioned that already. They've also built purpose-built hardware, purpose-built servers and boards, including these days now, including in a custom chips. One of their new chips is the Tensor Processing Unit, which is essentially designed for the machine learning and analytics as well. Integration with Google own data services. Google does own a lot of data, and including maps, and all of their G Suite and everything, all the applications will have very easy integration with data services as well. This morning, Google announced partnership with SAP. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we move on as well.
Let's do another quick poll, a really quick poll. Let's find out how many people are already in Google. So, are you using GCP yet? Just select yes or no, and we'll move on then with our webinar.
Okay, you can close the poll this time.
All right. Okay, so most of you voted, and a big chunk of you is not using GCP yet. Okay, so that's good insight for us, Gautam. Now, you talked a great deal about Google's strategy. Can you also compare it with the other clouds?
Okay, I could certainly. Actually, given today's topic in Google, what I'm going to ask you, Garima, is to actually take a look at the recording of a webinar that I did about a month ago, where I covered almost all the clouds. I covered Amazon, Azure, Google, IBM, and Oracle, and there's a recording available for that, and you're welcome to take a look at it any time. That would be a good place to look at it.
But could you dwell upon it for about 10 seconds?
Okay, so yes, certainly. So if you look at Amazon, let's start with Amazon. Amazon has been always the leader in started Amazon first and build your applications and then move to the enterprise data center. That's been kind of how Amazon has started, and their strategy is that. So they built a lot of tools and technologies to help people who are starting fresh in Amazon, and now they're beginning to actually build tools to have customers integrate with what they have on-prem, right? One of the big things that they have solved, one of the biggest problem people have is how do I move tons and tons of data to the cloud? They have the Snowmobile Edge. In fact, they have a container. They can bring a truck to your building and have you load up all your data and move it back. And so there's a very interesting thing called Snowmobile. In fact, in Amazon reInvent in Las Vegas, they actually drove the truck onto the stage as well. So you will see, and obviously innovation is also a big thing about them, right? And they also do adopt a lot of open source technology, so a lot of new technologies and products will always be created. At the same time, they are very focused on helping enterprise move to their cloud as well. Okay, Microsoft, on the other hand, is kind of somewhere in between. It's a very interesting story there, because they have done a wonderful job in building out Azure, but the biggest strength that Microsoft has is the existing relationship with the enterprise with all of their products. And the smartest thing Microsoft has done is Office 365. So once you've already got tapped into, almost everybody's now decommissioning the Exchange servers and moving to the Office 365 email service. And once you get there, then you start getting the next thing and the next thing, and eventually it makes much more sense to move your existing infrastructure if you're a Microsoft shop to begin with anyway, to move to the cloud. And that's really one of their key things. And they have done a lot of work in hybrid cloud, where and part of your infrastructure is running on Azure and part is running on enterprise as well. Google, I mentioned about it. Google has neither, except for the Google, what they call a G Suite now, the Google Apps, which has been very popular with education and new companies, but not necessarily with existing, legacy enterprises as well. So, but what they have done is, with the sheer brilliance of their technology and now trying to move into the enterprise, their partnership with SAP is a big signal of that fact. In fact, everybody's running. I just heard that there are 340,000 companies in the world which uses SAP, and now that they are moving it into not only the core HANA, but also integrating with G Suite, which is going to make it a lot more easier for customers to tap into SAP. IBM. Again, IBM is a slightly similar story with Microsoft, because they have sheer relationship with the enterprise, and it's a catch-up game for them to be able to meet the level of services that the public cloud like Amazon, Google, and Azure is providing. But what they have done is actually they have become partners of Amazon and Azure as well. So you get the best of everything. In other words, that's kind of their story as well. Oracle, late start. I think they're realizing that the entire suite of 22,000 plus products that they have, it's very legacy oriented, on-prem installation. So they're working very hard to move that into a cloud model. And one of their strategy is basically come to your own data center as it is today and convert the buying purchase and relationship from a one-time purchase to a subscription model, and that's a start. And then they're building out technology to help you integrate with what's on-prem, what's in the cloud.
Great.
So that kind of covers. Does that answer your question there?
It does. Thank you so much, Gautam. And I know you covered it in great detail at our previous webinar.
Yeah.
And just so everybody has a lot of that information, I will send out a link to the recording of that webinar.
Right. So this next slide is just fresh off the press this morning at 9 o'clock. They started announcing this, and the SAP HANA certification in Google was announced this morning. And you can run SAP HANA on Google starting right away. There will be integration of G Suite with it. There's a lot of things coming down the pipe in that regard. A couple of new things that we hear is coming out is Managed Progress SQL and Google Meet. Recently we heard about Amazon Chime and everything, so you will see a lot of collaboration technology coming along from all of the clouds as well. Google is now in the process of opening up their Netherlands data center as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the cloud deployment cycle. Now that we covered about, a little bit about, what Google is doing, what the cloud strategy is doing, now that let's take home, the work back home, right? So let's say that, I'm an enterprise CIO, we have interest in going to a cloud. So what exactly do I have to go through in that process? So I'm going to quickly go through this and walk you through that. So essentially is that, as you consider the cloud, there's always the evaluation phase. This is where the evaluation phase where you're looking at the technology of interest, the roadmap of yours and the cloud operator's roadmap, and you look at the strategic fit. The next thing is once you've decided that this cloud makes sense for me, the next question is the purchasing phase. What to buy, how much to buy, and how much will it cost? This is one of the most critical information that you would need as you make the decision to buy to the cloud, to move to the cloud. The next thing is the implementation phase, and of course the operations, and you kind of repeat the cycle as you move more and more towards the cloud. One of the big concerns and big questions everybody has is what to buy, how much to buy, and how much will it cost. And the whole intent of today's presentation is to really focus on that as well. All right, so fundamental question, what should I buy? How much should I buy? As provision or utilize? What are my buying options? What will it cost? How does it compare across? These are some of the fundamental questions that you would have as you start considering making the move to the cloud. So just to give you a perspective, right? So when you're looking at how much and what to buy, there are, almost now 700K plus products variations to choose from. Each cloud has about, anywhere from 10 to 20 actually, is more than 15. As every week we see new products being announced. And each product category has about 10 different variations, 10 different products within that. And then you have different classes, variations. Then you have things such as this is available in this geography but not there. And by the way, this is the buying options, this is the licensing options. So when you start looking at these permutations and combinations, it becomes very difficult for you to figure out exactly what you should buy and how you should buy it. Amazon itself has, just EC2 by itself. The EC2 by itself is about 100,000 plus options, right? When you look at all the different buying options and all licensing options and the product features and combinations. Azure has 60. Google has, even as we speak, Google has 100,000 plus options as well. So the key thing is that this is rapidly growing and changing very fast as well. So keeping track of this has become the challenge. Cloud pricing. Let's talk about how do they price, what are the nuances, and we'll talk about discounts, purchasing options, and so on and so forth for all of these products. All right. So what do clouds charge for. So once you go to the cloud, some of the basic elements that you would need is the compute, storage, the operating system, storage, and now once you look at storage, you have to, how are you using your storage? How much I/O is happening? That's another element that people would charge for. How much data is being transferred out of the cloud is yet another element. And then, of course, on top of that, you would, if you're building out a web-facing application, you would need load balancer, security products. You may need other analytics, big data, and all of these other things that you could buy. But you always start with the base elements, right? So these are the key things that you have to start with. Now, here's the key thing. If you look at your existing infrastructure and you do a quick scan of what you have, it is reasonably straightforward for you to figure out, okay, these are my 500 systems, and this is the configuration of each one of these, and this is the OS running on that, right? The challenge there is that when you are moving to the cloud operator is not only going to charge you for the physical resources, but it's also going to charge you for how are they being used. In other words, how much disk I/O is happening, how much network egress is happening. Now, those are two things that you don't have easy visibility into what on-prem currently. So one of the key things that we in Akasha is going to do is help you figure out, bring visibility all of these elements which would be charged for in the cloud and give you an estimate of how much it would charge in the cloud. Okay.
Great.
Right. Pricing versus discounts. Let's talk about this thing. So pricing, when it comes to pricing, most cloud will charge by the OS, the storage options, the compute instance type, obviously, tenancy, is it dedicated, is it shared, is it bare metal, software, any software being pre-installed, licensing type, is it bring your own license, or you buy the license from there, or is it the zone, is it running in Europe or US or in Asia? And then buying options, do you buy everything up front, do you buy on demand? These are some of the things that has very strong impact on the price of the product. So let's quickly look at across the board some of the licensing and discounting options that's available out there. In Amazon, you obviously have the on-demand, then the reserve instance where you have, you can have up to 1, 2, and 3 years, or no upfront, or upfront full, or partial upfront, convertible upfront. These are all the variations, and very soon you can get pretty lost in this whole thing. You can have spot and purchase for with no bound on how long you're gonna use, or you spot in a predefined option as well. And Google, we're gonna cover a little more on Google as we go. Predefined templates is what you can always buy, but one of the key things about Google and a big differentiator is custom templates, and I'm going to spend a little more time on that as well. Google also does charge by the minute, by 10 minutes as well. And their method of discounting is different from others. I'll cover this in a bit. Azure is, you have the MPSA or CSP, online purchase, enterprise agreements, and you also have the open program, which is meant for small businesses. IBM, you always have the online purchasing, but more importantly, if you are considering IBM, more than likely you are an IBM customer already. Consider enterprise agreements. That's much the most cost-effective model for you. And same goes for Oracle as well. So Google pricing. Let's talk about Google pricing because that's what we're here for. One of the things about Google pricing is that there is no such thing as on-demand, reserve instance, and so on and so forth. It's just one simple, straightforward, where there's no upfront cost. It's pay as you go, but you get discounts based on sustained user discounts, which means that if you are using a system continuously for a period of time, the longer you use, the lesser the cost becomes as you go forward. So the first month, you could be starting with 20% off whatever it is. But if you continue to use it, for the second month, now your discount could be 25% off the list price. And I think it goes down to about 30% off the list price as you go in sustained discount model. There's no termination fee. You can they charge you by per minute billing. So if you stop right there, if you kill the VM, everything, your payment stops right there. You're not charged till the end of the month. You're not charged upfront for the full 3 years or 1 year or whatever it is, right? You don't have to. So I cover those things as well, permanent billing. And custom machine types. This is very interesting. So custom machine is, because if you go to any other clouds, you would see templates such as, okay, 2 core and 4 CPUs, 4 cores and 8 GB RAM or 16 GB RAM. So they are standard fixed shapes or templates that you have to pick from. In Google's world, it's different. Like if you have a system that needs 5 cores and 9 GB of RAM, you can actually get that. So you can configure a flexible, so that way you don't have to pay for what you don't need. Preemptible VM instance. This is another one which is very interesting. It's kind of like the, if you have a lot of batch processing to be done, you just, and you have stateless machines that can do a lot of things. Then you just spin up a whole bunch of preemptible VMs, and then that's significantly lower cost than the standard VM. So that's another way to look at it. So again, when you look at this thing, you do have some understanding of your workload, different kind of workloads as well. That will help you figure out what would make sense for you. So let's talk about the best practices. Any questions? Right. So basically, as we work with many customers, this is not something that we've come up on our own. We have, as we work with our customers, what we see, this is what happens. First and foremost, as you consider moving to the cloud and start planning for the cloud, you do have to take an inventory of what you have on-prem, right? And the next thing is, now given that the cloud not only charges for the core configuration of the infrastructure, but there is an element of charge for how it's being used. You do have to understand some utilization, how are your systems being used. Then the next thing is that a lot of customers do want to get a sense of, okay, hey, how much is it costing me even as I run? If I were to make, continue to run my systems on-prem, how much would it cost? Then the next thing is, okay, right, now that I have identified of my 1,000 virtual machines or systems, I've identified these 100 to move to the cloud. What is the equivalent in the cloud? What is the equivalent template? Is it, whatever is the compute and storage and memory configuration that would be matching to what I have on-prem? And now you look at, there are 2 elements to it. One is, as is, if I have a system that's got 4 CPU and 16 GB of RAM, what is the equivalent of that in the cloud? Or the right size, which is very important, because in general, we tend to provision a lot more when you're running an application on cloud, on-prem, because you kind of start thinking about, oh, okay, this is in database server, I'm going to need this, but a lot of these decisions are made based on gut feel than really data. So what needs to happen is that if you had to measure how your system has been actually used, you can actually come up with, okay, hey, instead of using 8 cores and 32 GB of RAM, I can get away with 4 cores and 24 GB of RAM, which could be a significantly saving in cost. So this is an important aspect to be considered as well. Then, now you mapped it to the cloud. What is the equivalent? You kind of mapped it to, okay, what's the cost of running as is and then right size. And then now that you have, okay, I have these systems running on-prem, and these are the equivalent running on cloud, but what else would I need? You may need load balancers. You may need a CDN service. You may need VPNs. You may need whatever else. So you kind of start thinking about it, because things that you took for granted may not necessarily be, you may have to do something more as you move to the cloud. Then you start, now that you've configured, you've understood what everything you need, you start figuring out, okay, how much will it cost in Google, Amazon, IBM, whatever, And so there are obviously cost is not the only factor where you decide a cloud, but whatever the factor you've chosen to choose the cloud, you will now need to get an understanding of how much it is going to cost you as you move forward, right? And then you basically generate the bill of materials for that project and you move on, right? So that's kind of the life cycle of a migration from on-prem to the cloud.
I wanted to emphasize best practices number 4 and number 5. Mm-hmm. So what you described very eloquently there, Gautam, is that the customer, as they're migrating, need to take a close look at their on-prem environment to see what's provisioned versus what's utilized. Right. Because oftentimes they are over-provisioned on-prem, and they're utilizing just a small portion of what they provisioned. Mm-hmm. But when you go to the cloud, you can save a great deal if you only spin up your utilized portion of resources as opposed to the fully provisioned. So, we've seen customers save 30 to 60% when they look at, what is right-sized versus what's as is. Okay. So, so that's definitely something I wanted to underscore here.
Thank you. Okay. Right. Moving right. How are we doing on time, by the way?
We're doing good. We have time.
Okay. So one of the things you would do is basically, once you kind of figure out what's needed, you would want to kind of compare apples to apples. So, in this particular instance, we've taken some samples from our application, and you can see that these are the equivalent virtual machines across the different clouds. What's the price? And based on some egress of 1,000 GB, this is how much we cost per month, and so on and so forth. So this kind of information is very helpful as you consider a move to the cloud. So it gives you a comparison of apples to apples. All right. So let's talk about in a case study of a customer that we did. So this customer is a SaaS solution provider with over 100 plus customers. And what their solution required was a dedicated virtual machines of 2 to 3 for each customer. That was what they needed, and they had 30 ESX servers and 450 virtual plus VMs. So the requirement was to move to the cloud. All right. So the challenge they needed to do was they needed to do a business case analysis for should we continue to stay on-prem or should we move to the cloud, and what are the kind of chargebacks that we would have to apply to the customer if we were to move to the cloud. So it's not just the cost of the VMs, but what additional elements do we have to pay for, which we need to charge back to the customers. So they started working with spreadsheets. They did about 5 to 10 systems, and then once they went more than 5 to 10 systems, it became practically impossible for them to compare and contrast with different clouds and so on and so forth. It became extremely difficult. So what they ended up using our solution. They were able to model and estimate, the entire everything that they needed, which was taking them weeks to do in a spreadsheet in less than an hour. Right? That's what we did for this particular customer.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. So at this point, let's talk a little bit about Akasha. So in Akasha, what we do is we have a technology. It's provided as a SaaS application, and with this technology, you can discover on-premise workloads, not only the configuration provision, but the utilization factor as well. And then once you have discovered everything, then you can model as to, okay, of this, 500s or thousands of systems that I have on-prem, what will it take for me to move the entire set or a subset of this to a cloud? And then our system will do some number crunching in the back end, and it will show you, okay, this particular VM maps to that. This particular VM maps to that in that cloud, and so on and so forth. It will give you a mapping of that, and it will give you the cost of running that particular VM in Amazon, Google, Azure, IBM, and Oracle as well. And it will give you two options. One is as is provisioned, or based on utilization, what is our recommended configuration or shape or template that you should pick in the cloud as well. And you can do that in minutes. That's the whole idea, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to now move into the demo itself. So in the demo, I'm going to talk about what we call as a collector. And then we're going to run the collector on any system on-prem. Then you do the upload of the files and run them on. This is essentially the process. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through that. At this point of time, as I transition, maybe it's a good time to do a quick poll?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you all could please answer that poll.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. I think everybody's done voting. Sounds as if migrating existing or deploying new is the same, but half of you are doing both. So this is good information, and with that, we will jump back into our demo.
Okay. To start with, let's start with where to start. You just go onto our website, akashacloud.com, and click on the login to the Akasha SaaS, and then go to Akasha SaaS. So there you will be asked to create your own account and so on and so forth. I already have an account, and I log into my account. So the first and foremost thing you will see is, if you're your first-time user, you'll be only seeing this one called Manage Source Data, in which basically this is where I will be now uploading information of my on-prem infrastructure. But before I even do that, the first and foremost thing I would do is actually collect the information to begin with. So the first and foremost thing I would do is download the remote collector. And this will, give you a zip file. You unzip this file, and then there is, by the way, a remote collector user guide, which is very simple. It's like 3 or 4 steps to actually go to collect it. So it will come up. It will ask you your name, and it will ask you what's the IP address of the vCenter server that you are interested in, and a username and a password for that particular virtual machine, vCenter. And then it will spit out 4 files as 4 CSV files. These are human-readable CSV files. We collect only metadata. There's no confidential information at all. And you're welcome to take a look at those files to make sure that, there's nothing confidential that's being pulled out. Once you have that, the next thing you would do is actually ingest this thing, and you would pick a file from your system, and in my case these are the 4 files, and I would pick all of those things, and I can give a name afterwards that this is my vCenter, and then I'll do the upload. So now a couple of things. The download of the software takes it's only 25 megabytes of file. It takes like 10 seconds. The actual running of this collector can take from a few minutes to about 5-6 minutes, depending upon the size of your environment. If you have 100 VMs, it's going to be fairly quick. If you've got 5,000 VMs, it's going to take a little longer. Once those files are done, next thing is that you do the upload, right? And when you do upload, again, not only are we importing the data, but we're starting the analysis process of that data. And again, depending upon the size of your environment, it could take a few minutes, or it could take 5 to 10 minutes as well. So once you are at that point where you've collected the data and uploaded the data, you're now ready to start modeling. In my case here, I have already loaded 3 systems. On December 2nd, I loaded this one of my data center information. It's got 8 hosts and 109 virtual machines, and I can look at the details if I want to, but I'm going to move on and start proceeding to the cloud. So the first and foremost it gives you is some interesting information about my environment, which is, okay, I got 8 hosts, so much of physical disk capacity, 19 terabytes allocated of the 21 terabytes. I have a total of 16 CPUs and a total of 72 cores, and this is how much memory I have as well, combined across these 8 CPUs. This is a quick summary of my virtual machines. I have 109 virtual machines, 99 are powered on, 10 are powered off, and this two information, very important. How much is the network activity going on? This is something that you normally don't get. This is in 1 month, this set of 109 VMs or 99 VMs is moving about 32 terabytes of data back and forth. Now, this has to be considered as a move to the cloud, right? If you're going to be starting pulling 32 terabytes of data out of your cloud every month, that can become the most expensive piece of your software, of your cloud expenses. This particular data set that we have in model, this is for an environment which is shipping out a lot of data from the cloud. Okay, and this is the I/O activity in the disk as well. So this is how much when you buy the cloud infrastructure, a lot of the disk I/O is already baked into the cost, but to a certain level. After that, it will start charging you for it. So this is an important element as well. And this is kind of how the CPUs are allocated today. And again, so this is the utilization. You get to start seeing utilization information about your cloud at this point. Okay, and here's something that's of interest. If you were to move everything, the entire infrastructure on-prem, which is the entire 99 systems to the cloud, currently on-prem is costing you about 19 grand based on some pricing, which I'll talk about in a few moments. And if you were to move the whole thing into Azure, it's going to cost 9,000. Amazon is about 8,000. SoftLayer, IBM is 7,000. Google is also around 7,000. Oracle is a little more expensive than the rest, right, for the entire thing. Now, the question is, how did we come to this particular on-prem cost? I'm going to quickly mention about it, but not dwell too much on it. So essentially, what we have done, we've looked at the cost structure of systems from Lenovo, Cisco, HP, and Dell, and based on the configuration of your own hardware and the industry standard pricing that we've seen from these 4 vendors, we have done some estimation of the cost of the infrastructure that you are using today. You obviously have the ability to edit all of these things to actually map it to the exact numbers for your own cloud, so that this numbers is something that you would be able to customize. Okay. All right, moving right along, now that I have an understanding of what I have on-prem and how it's being utilized, how much CPU is being used, how much I/O is happening, how much egress is happening, now I can start modeling for the cloud. So I click on the modeling for the cloud. So next thing is, okay, I'm going to select by host, right? So if I select by host, let's say for the heck of it, I'm going to select this host 23, then all of the virtual machines that is in this particular host gets listed here. I can select all of them, and it goes through a couple of pages, or I can select one at a time. Now, here's something interesting. If you see that a system is blue in color, that means that I have already done some modeling for that system at some point of time earlier doing a demo or some exercise. And if I model this one more time, it will not consume any more Kasha license. So far, just to clarify, at this point, till this time, no, you are not burning any of Akasha license. Everything is, till this time is available for free to anybody. So next is I add to this the modeling group. So I've added, these are the systems I've added. And then I can now say I have added 18 virtual machines, nothing new, everything has been modeled before. So if I were to compare the cost across each cloud, it's not going to burn any more license at this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So as you can see, for these systems, the 18 systems, based on the configuration, you can see that on-prem is for those 18 systems, about 2008, whatever, 400 a month. And SoftLayer is about almost 4,000, and these are the different costs that you would see at the glance. You can look at compute only, you can look at storage only, you can look at network cost and I/O cost as well. Okay, then that's kind of a summary. Now let's go a little deeper into exactly what's happening in every cloud. So let's look at Amazon On Demand. If I were to look at Amazon On Demand, but let's say for today's discussion, we're interested in Google, so we're going to take a look at Google. So if you look at Google, the compute cost is $925 as if you were to move the provision infrastructure. Now this line at the bottom is very interesting because this is the right size cost. If you were not to move as provisioned, but as based on utilization, and as recommended by our engine, if you were to pick different kinds of configuration, then this would be the cost of compute for those 18 systems per month. The storage cost would be so much, and any disk I/O right now is free because it's within the limit that is kind of built into the current cost. Network, this particular system is doing a lot of network activities, and in fact, it's almost 50% of the cost is coming from the network utilization as well.
So I just wanted to point something out here. All the data that you see here is what Akasha has discovered. So in other words, we have discovered the network activity and the I/O activity. We've discovered the compute elements and the storage elements, and we're showing you the cost based on our mapping exercise. So we know what you have on-prem, and if you were to map all of what you have on-prem to Google, that's what it's going to cost you. And the right-sized portion versus the total portion, you can see that there's cost savings we are showing there of $418 per month. So based on our discovery of your environment, we are detecting that you'll be able to save $418 if you were to migrate to Google. Okay, so back to you, Gautam.
Okay, so let's pick this, and so once we pick the Google, then we're going to say, okay, these are the specific, so again, this is a summary of what you've already seen, and this is the key element here. So for each virtual machine, this is a VM ID. This is the actual Google equivalent template that you would, as is provision. But if you were to look at what is right size, this is the one. So the compute cost for as provision is $19 for this particular system, but if you were to look at the compute which is right size, it's going to be $5.86. So this is the kind of information you would get. And then moving right along. And by the way, I'm kind of rushing through the demo today in the interest of time. I would be very happy to give custom demos to anybody who's interested as well at some point, whenever needed. So in addition to this, let's say that, okay, now that we pick up the basic infrastructure, I want to pick additional stuff that needs to be added to my cloud infrastructure. I want to do some big store, nearline storage, and whatnot. So I can pick some nearline storage. I'm going to add this, and I want to, let's see, I want to okay, there's all kinds of things, interesting things going on here. So let's say it's some DNS. DNS is practically free. Anyways, network load, forwarding rule. Okay, so I have, for the 18 systems, let's say that I really need to have Windows. Okay. and so on and so forth. So it basically adds up all of these into a bucket again, and this is the cost, and I say, okay, storage, this is per GB, so I can now edit this into, okay, I need 1,000 of these, and I need in a zone tiers, I need 1,200 of this, and I need, I had 18 systems, so I need 10 windows, and so on and so forth. And then basically, now at this point, I have added all of the things that I need in addition to the advanced, basically the other elements of the cloud that I have interest in. And then, by the way, now I'm treating this as a project. So I may have to spend one time, $5,000 to move this, to pay some consultants to help me to move to the cloud. There could be some other costs for moving the data and so on and so forth. That's another $1,000 to figure out how to move the data across. Once everything is in the cloud, I need access to my infrastructure in the cloud, so I may have to buy some additional network services or anything. So let's say that's another $300 per month. Administration, my team is already paid for. I don't need anything extra. The team will do it. And so now I can proceed to the final cost. So this is it. This is the end. This is the final report that I'm looking for. And at the offset, this is what's the cost of the infrastructure as I see it for those elements. And these are some of the summary of what I'm moving. I'm moving 18 of the 109. So many vCPUs are moving, so much memory, so much storage is happening. This is the current cost of these elements on-prem, and this is the cost. One-time migration cost is going to cost me $6,000. And basically, I have decided to do Google, so I have a choice of custom or predefined, and so these are the two costs of those two cloud resources combined. If I was able to negotiate with Google and they gave me some discount, I could apply the discounts here. At this point, I'll change the numbers as well. So when it comes to Google, it gives me two things. One is that I can go predefined, or I can go custom. Predefined means that they have set buckets, set configurations that you pick, or I pick the one which is custom built, and that will be this. And these are the VMs. These are the configurations. And these are the templates, equivalent templates. This is as is. This is the right size. This is the cost, everything. And you can see this. By the way, I'm quickly scrolling through this table. And these are the cost of additional services that I decide to add to my bucket. These are the monthly costs of additional network and access and so on and so forth. This is the one-time cost. And the total cost, as you can see, is I see four numbers here. One is predefined with right sizing, as is, and so on and so forth. And at this point, I can export this plan to a PDF, and I can also save this to come back and take a look at it as to my new Google plan. So I save this project. If I click on export, whatever you see on screen is going to be available as a PDF file that you can insert into one of your presentations. And there you go. So there is a PDF file, and it is also, and whatever and if I go to my open projects, you will see that this, oops, what happened? Okay, there you go. This is my latest project. My new Google, this is on GCP, 18 VMs, and I can also get everything in an Excel spreadsheet as well. So if I were to open Excel here, you will see that everything, this is who I am, what's my information about, when was it generated, and what's the date of the source that I uploaded today. This is the base infrastructure of everything that I have. of which I have selected. These are the 18 VMs that I selected for the purpose of modeling. This is the current monthly cost of the base infrastructure, and this is the cost of the VMs. So you can see everything in the spreadsheet, but what's more important is you can see the information about every VM that I have. This is the mapping. This is the key information that you're looking for, that this particular VM maps to this, and this is the configuration. This is the cost per month, cost of storage, cost of the compute, which is memory, core, and CPU, I/O cost, and network cost for each one of these systems. This one happens to be a backup system, which is doing a lot of restores apparently. So it's got a lot of data moving in and out, and then the cost of this will be fairly high. Then this would be the right size option. Instead of as provisioned, this is the utilized version. So this kind of gives you so what I have shown you is how to start with the application and how to do the download of the collector and then collect your information, upload it to our SaaS website, and then look at the data as you see how it's being used, and then we go through a modeling exercise and then to the report. So we have, how are we doing on time right now?
So we are 4 minutes away. We do have a couple of questions that have come in.
Okay.
So if you're done, then we can jump into the questions. Otherwise, you can finish your demo.
I think at this point, I've finished the demo. I've given how to run it, how to get the reports.
Okay. So the first question is, how do you get information about my on-prem environment? Do you have to run any agent on our servers?
Okay, very good question. So our software, the collector, is a very non-intrusive application. You don't require it to be installed at all. There's no software installed anywhere except for downloading that software to a Windows system, which could be your laptop. And all it needs is access. The user has to have access to the vCenter server that you have interest on. So essentially, it talks to the vCenter through Web Services API, and it collects information. So there's no ports open required, nothing required. Once it gets the data, it stores it locally on the system where you're running as CSV files. And then next thing you do is upload it to our cloud infrastructure, wherein essentially it's like loading a file to Google Drive. You don't need to open anything. You don't need to open any ports, nothing. So it's a very non-intrusive, very friendly, easy-to-use application.
Got it. Do you need to open a network connection from our data center to your solution?
Not at all. It's just like any web-based application that you would use. Or we have HTTPS connection to the system, and that's what it is.
Okay. Or rather, how much of my uploaded data is visible to Akasha Cloud? So in other words, can you see the data that I have uploaded into Akasha Cloud?
No. So what happens is that we encrypt the data based on your passwords, and so the data is not visible to us at all.
Okay, so that was it as far as the questions go, and I want to thank everybody for attending, and I want to thank you, Gautam, for taking the time to go over the details of Google, as well as the latest updates from today, and also giving the demo. As I said earlier, this session is recorded, so we'll be sending out the recording to everybody. And with that, we will conclude this webinar. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Garima. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to going to Google Next right now. Bye now.